made his own account look bad. So, I'm giving away the answer again. If you are to test with other firms, make sure that they know what you're doing, and make sure that they have the answers that they actually know that what you're doing is a test and not a real thing. That's actually part of the solution for a number of the other things we've seen as well. So, what are the lessons we can learn from all this? I've put in a number of actual causes that we've seen over the presentation. First of all, testing in production. Testing in production is sometimes a necessary evil, but be aware that if you test in production, that you are aware of the consequences it can have. You don't want to have another Chernobyl. Be aware that the act of testing might be disrupted. Second of all, production test confusion. If you have two monitors next to each other, like they had at the Burst Exchange of Amsterdam, and people then go into production without knowing it, that's about as bad as testing in production. Maybe even worse because they're not aware that they're doing it. A true separation of test and production facilities. And that means that the hardware, logical hardware, physical hardware, sometimes even software, sometimes data, should be separated. The less overlap you have between test and production, the less likely it's going to be that by accident you change something in production that should have been in your test environment. Production data in test environments, that's bad. We've seen a number of cases where that can also go wrong and also give you a problem if either data gets out there or you get audited. We've had actually, I was working at this bank doing test data management, and they were actually one of the first banks in the Netherlands to think about that and to say, we want to change this. Other banks were still using production data, and then when there was a big audit by the privacy group in the Netherlands, the government privacy group, and a lot of the banks got bad marks because of the fact they were still testing with production data. And the bank I was working for could at least say that they were working on a method to get out of that. I mean, they were not finished yet, I wasn't done yet, but at least they could show the measures they were taking. So, testing with production data, I mean, if you have to do migration tests, if you have a piece of software that would migrate the software from a certain database into a new version of the database, I'm not sure whether you not want to do that with real data. You can test it with test data, but before you do the real migration, you probably want to see how it responds to real production data. So you cannot always circumvent testing with production data, but if you do so, do it in a secure environment, such that not other people can get to it, and that you have it at the right level of security. Don't leave the back door open while you have the front door barricaded, right? Last but not least, configuration management and also version management, because configuration management to make sure that you get the right settings in production, but also version management that you make sure that you get the right software versions out there in the real world. And you know, the security with security leaks and hacking and stuff like that. Two of you have applied all the recent updates of their operating system on their computer. You might, okay, good for you. If you have not done that, each update Windows sends out is a recipe for hackers on the vulnerabilities that is in your system. Because they just have to see at what patch has been made, what fix has been done, and they can see what was wrong. So any patch you have not done on your system is a vulnerability for people to use. I mean, I'm Apple-minded. That's what I like about Apple. I mean, Windows gives you a patch and say, well, this is the small piece of software to fix what you're doing. That's easy to reverse engineer. Apple just sends out a new update and gigabytes of information like, oh, you need to install this. It's bad from a consumer point of view because actually you need to download lots of information. However, a hacker has to look at a lot of information as well before he can find out what the vulnerabilities were. Yet again, any update you miss in your operating system, specifically if you're working for a company, is a possible threat. Realize that. Good. Well, I'm done. In time and in the slides, because the next slide will be the blank slide. So, we have got time for one question, I would say, so if you have a question.
Yeah, this morning you mentioned about this test environment as compared to the production environment and what's the risk of this. And probably you can share with us the risk. You share the development environment with the test environment, not the test environment.
Okay. The question is, why do you want to share production environments and test environments, and what's the reason for that, or development environment and test environments?
No, just focus on the development, share with the test environment. Because
all right.
The test perspective is that if you're doing something on the test environment, you don't want the developer to change something.
Right. Okay, so it's in this case we do not look at production versus test, we look at test versus development. And I've seen places where you have actually, well, I can give you a real life example. What's the problem there? I was working at the Exchange of Amsterdam, and we had to put in a new piece of software, and I always used to have a freeze. So 2 weeks before the end of the testing period, I did not want to have any changes. I would do final testing, and then we could go to production. I was doing my final testing, and then on the last day, I reran the most important test once more. And suddenly, something broke. One of the main pieces of software did not work anymore. So I said, stop, you cannot go into production because of this failure. And then my manager got angry at me and said, why didn't you test this before? I said, I have tested it before. Look, we've tested it over and over again, and now it's not working. The reason why this happened is because in the freeze, development still made a change in my testing environment. They thought it was a small change, so we can squeeze that into the freeze, and it got wrong. So sharing development and test environments is always tricky, because they want to change, and at some point you want it to be stable. So if you do not have a clear separation of test and development environments, you're likely, or possibly, you will test on something which is not stable, and then you will not know if the results you had earlier on will carry forward into production. See how the customer wants it, but it's not specified. So ask the customer what he really wants, and that's the next one. This is how the customer really wants it. If you've specified it something else, but that's not what the customer really wants, the customer doesn't really know what he wants, so we've built it the right way. Okay, is that true? I don't know. I'm just a tester. I can only test what I see. I can test what's been specified. If it's not specified, I can only assume that it must be right or wrong, but it's not up to me to decide. It's up to the customer to decide. So this is how the customer really wants it. That might be true, but then I have to ask the customer. And do not have to trust on the fact that development thinks that they know what the customer wants. I mean, John was talking about this Chinese whispering game this morning, where the business says something, it goes into requirement a bit different, and then the development does it a bit different, and then testing gets it a bit different, and before we know it, we're building something that the customer doesn't really want. That's normal, but if you start to deviate from what has been told, because the customer really wants that, I want to see it. I want to have an autograph. I want to have the customer say, yes, indeed, we've made a mistake in the specifications, this is how we really want it. Then that's fine. Then I can test it. Then I'll be satisfied. No problem. Do you really need this much testing time? Really? It's about a third of the total project budget. Do you really need this much testing time? Well, I had to defend my estimates for testing over and over again. And to be totally honest, I do think we spend way too much time in testing. But that's not because of the fact that I do not need that much time. It's because of the fact that the quality of the software is so poor. If you start making better software, I can do with less testing. Ooh, you don't want to say that too loud. So do I really need this much time for testing? Yes. And how can I prove that? By giving them a summary of all the stuff I'm doing. So if I have an estimate which is broken down into activities, and then they say you need to spend less time on testing, I can tell, okay, what activities do you not want me to do? Would you please scratch them out and I will not do them. It is your responsibility that I'm not doing them. Yes, I do need a lot of time in testing. And it's mostly because of the fact that we actually find a lot of errors. And then if I find a lot of errors, you have to do a lot of bug fixing, I have to do a lot of retesting, which is more expensive as well. I need time to set up test environments, I need time to get my test data right, I need time to prepare. So yes, I really do need this much time in testing. Is that still true in waterfall? This was true in waterfall. Is it still true in agile? Yes, but it's less obvious because it's now being intermitted in the entire work. It's now part of the cycle I'm going through. So it's less obvious that I actually still spend a lot of time in testing, but it's now spread out over the entire project. So do I really need this much testing time? Yes, I do, and I can prove it because I've got a breakdown of all the activities I'm going to do. If we just add some developers to the testing, we can shorten the testing interval. Testing is taking way too long. Developers are not doing anything anyway, so they will help you. Is that a good idea?
No.
Well, it can be. If they have had the proper testing training, they might be able to help. And they know the code, they know what's supposed to be done. But you know who I'd rather have on my team instead of development? Requirements engineering. Because requirements engineering has a similar way of thinking as testing has. I'll give you a short example. This is how a developer tests his code. This is a highway, and I build it as a developer. Yes, 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 yes. I can get to the other side. Is that testing? No. A tester would go like, there's an obstacle here. Wouldn't like that. That's a bug. No traffic lights. Okay, that's dangerous. Oh, look, there's some. Oh, the fence is not really very strong over here. Okay. Actually, the requirements engineer is the one who should have thought of the obstacle, who should have thought of the traffic light, so he's got a different mindset. I'd rather have requirements engineering helping me in testing than development. So, yes, I can add extra people to my team to shorten time. However, always be aware, I mean, I don't know how many of you have ever read F.P. Brooks' The Mythical Man Month. Adding people to a project that is late will only make it more late. Why? Because you need to work in people, you have new opinions, you have a bigger group, more consensus, you have to spread out the work over more people. If you never have read F.P. Brooks' Mythical Man Month, please do so. Very nice essay. Actually, it's a whole book of essays. It's a book of essays, 40 years old, and it's still true. Why is it still true? People don't change, right? It's about people in IT. It's not about people. It's not about IT. It's about people in IT, and people don't change. 40 years old, it's still true. You cannot stop this release. That's true, and you cannot force it. Because this is the development manager, what the development manager really told me. Do you really think you can stop this release? I said, no. And you cannot force it. And he was like, okay, I guess you're right. I do not have the power to stop something. I can only give the advice to say, well, I would do it or I would not do it based on the tests I've done. I still see these risks, I still see these defects, and I would advise you not to go into production. I cannot stop it. If you still decide to continue, that's your choice. And actually, I've seen software go into production which I know was defective, but because we wanted to be ahead of competition, we still went ahead. And it was a sound choice. But it was a commercial decision and not a testing decision. I only give the advice. I do not really stop. And sometimes I have very strong advice, and sometimes I have very strong arguments not to do so. And sometimes people would be foolish not to believe me. But I only give you advice. Why don't you also pick up setting up a review process, test management process, etc.? You are just at the beginning of the process. Testing is just some test preparation. You not have everything, you don't have a full-time everything on your plate yet, and we need someone to set up a review process. Can you do that? Sure. Review process, static testing, I could do that. Change management process. Okay, I could have a look at that. But I don't want to have these responsibilities as soon as testing starts. Because then I'll be busy, and then I'll have to manage and the test process, and the review process, and the change management process. So even though it might be interesting, it might be worthwhile to pick up some of these things, I want to make sure that I do not have them on my plate anymore as soon as I get busy, and as soon as my turn comes to be really hectic. So why don't you? Yes, you could. But make sure that you do not take more than you can, that you cannot pick up more than you can take on, and that it's released or turned over to someone else as soon as you're busy. If anything goes wrong, you can blame me. Development manager literally said that to me. I want to go into production. I have not done testing yet. Yes, but I don't think that you're going to find anything anymore. We've already found a lot of stuff. Yes, but those are all minor defects. I said, well, I cannot really assess the impact of the defects. I still think we should wait for it to go into production. Well, if anything goes wrong, you can just blame me. Okay. I was in the company for 2 weeks at that moment, or 2 months. So I just started. He was there for 15 years. He was a development lead. He had seniority. He was well respected within the firm, and he was not going to let me stop him. So he said, if anything goes wrong, you can blame me. And then the management looked at him and said, well, okay, if you want to take the blame. And I was like, what's going wrong here? You've asked me to come in to be your test manager. Obviously something went wrong because you've taken up someone new to do this task. And the first time I get into any discussion, I'll be overruled by the development manager. They did not give me my task for nothing. So probably something was itchy. So I pointed this out to them. I said, sure, you can take his word for it, and you can go into production, and you can ignore my input, but why have you assigned me to do this? And then they looked at me and they said, what do you mean? I said, well, probably something went wrong the last release. Yes, it did. I said, so what are we doing differently this time? Well, we've assigned you. He said, yes, but you don't listen to me, so what's the use? So if anything, we did not meet the standards. The production set was crucial, so he said, I will give the go, no go. And I said, okay, I just put the cards on the table. These are the facts. You wanted me to do something. If I give an advice, you don't listen to me. Are you really taking this seriously? And you have to pick your battles. I mean, sometimes it is no different, and sometimes it is like this. But you have been given your assignment for a reason, so stick to it. Explain why you think what you're doing is right. Okay, I will wrap up now because the next speaker is already eagerly waiting to take the stage. And you all have to go out and back in again before we continue. So in that sense, that's good. So what are the patterns that we've seen? We've seen that people do not always know what testing is or do not want to know what testing is. So they either dismiss you because of the fact that they say, well, you don't have to test this because it's only minor. That might mean that they do not really realize what they're saying. We've got some procedural attacks, like, well, this is not within a procedure, so it doesn't have to be done. Okay, know your procedures, know why you're changing procedures, and know why you're doing it. And last but not least, organizational attacks. People say, well, they have more status, they have more. You have your role in the organization, and you have to stick to it. Well, at least you have to make people aware what happens if you do not stick to it. Food for thought. Testing is a distinct profession. Test management is a rarely understood profession, right? When push comes to shove, it's each to his own. So make sure that if you have some kind of information, that you log it, that you somehow have an email about this. And you have been assigned your role for a reason, right? It's not that you're there purely to be nice and friendly. And that actually concludes my presentation. So Paul, we'll just get everybody out and back in again. And then you can